to me, it's about loyalty, right? So we're nearly not in the page view business anymore. I mean, I love page views. It's exciting when a story goes viral and you see 100,000 page views or 1 million page views we've seen. But we're really not in the page view business. Page views are about serving just those quick, cheap clicks that you can generate through doing a story about the latest zoo baby or something like that. Those things generate a lot of page views, but they're sort of hollow page views. And at most legacy newspapers, you correct me if I'm wrong, but the average time that people spend on stories is maybe 45 seconds. And very consistently over the past 5 years, the average time that people spend on Colorado Sun stories has been close to 3 minutes. And to me, that means either we have really slow readers or we're producing content that is engaging for people. And I think that that's the case.
Welcome to the Local News Matters podcast, where we explore pathways to stronger journalism, better businesses, and healthier communities. I'm Tim Regan Porter, CEO of the Colorado Press Association. This episode, I talk with Larry Ryckman, editor of the journalist-owned news outlet, the Colorado Sun. Transitioning to a nonprofit model on its 5th anniversary, the Sun has not only survived, but thrived. It has garnered national attention for its approach to news coverage and its business model. The Sun now boasts more individual members than the much-lauded Texas Tribune. Its approach to growing reader revenue without a paywall is one I hope more publishers will take a hard look at. If you like this episode and what we're doing more generally, please follow in your favorite podcast app, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and tell your friends about us. This is a side project and a labor of love, and your support means a lot. You can find past episodes, full transcripts, and relevant links, and sign up for our newsletter at localnewsmatterspodcast.com, or for lazy typists like me at lnmpod.com. You can also follow us on most social media channels at lnmpod. And now I bring you Larry Ryckman of the Colorado Sun. Welcome, Larry. Thank you for joining me.
Hey, thank you.
Wanted to have you on for a while. What the Colorado Sun has done is notable on a number of fronts, and you just celebrated back in September of last year your 5th anniversary and became a nonprofit moving from a certified B Corp at the same time. So a very momentous time for you.
Yeah, we've been busy, no doubt.
Listeners probably have heard of the Sun in if they're outside of the state in the context of the Denver Post rebellion, as it's been termed. And so talk a little bit about the founding of the Sun and why you and the other founders there thought it was important to start something new.
So back in 2018, I was senior editor at the Denver Post, and I've been in journalism for 40 plus years. I was an assistant managing editor for the Associated Press, the world's largest news organization. I was a foreign correspondent. I oversaw AP's national desk. I've done a few things in journalism. And in 2018, found me as senior editor at the Denver Post, which was, in fact, still owned by Alden Global Capital, a hedge fund that owns, a lot of newspapers around the country. And the Denver Post had been cut and cut and cut from a height of 307 journalists in its newsroom at one point to about 100 at the start of 2018. We were told to move out of our building, the iconic white Denver Post building right downtown across the street from the state capitol. And, many of us felt like, better to lose a building than to lose more people. If this saves jobs, okay, we've worked in worse places than a printing plant, which is where they were moving the newsroom to. But then just weeks later, Alden Global Capital ordered us to cut another third from the newsroom. And I realized, and many others realized at that point that nothing that we did was going to have any impact on Alden's decisions, not working faster, not being smarter, not being more digitally savvy. So personally, for me, my choice was I could stay there, I could sit around and complain about it, or I could go do something different. And I decided, and a number of my other colleagues decided the same thing, that there had to be a better way. And frankly, we also felt that Colorado deserved better, that Colorado residents deserved deeper, more in-depth journalism than a hedge fund was willing to to provide. And I want to be clear, I still support my friends and colleagues at the Denver Post. I mean, there are a lot of talented people over there doing good work, doing the best that they can. But I understood all too well that, Alden had its own plans, and those plans didn't really revolve around doing great journalism. And I didn't want to be part of that. So we struck out with nine of my colleagues from the Denver Post, some of the top people, my fellow senior editor, Dana Caulfield, a number of Pulitzer Prize winners, top people from the Denver Post. And we all decided to throw our lot in together and decided there had to be a better way. So we had access to some capital. We can get into that if you'd like, but basically there was a guy who made billions of dollars through cryptocurrency and decided that he wanted to be a savior for local journalism. And he gave us a very large and generous grant. He had no influence whatsoever over the journalism that we did. Doesn't live in Colorado either, but gave us the money to stand up our operation and make our case to the people of Colorado. As when we announced the creation of the Colorado Sun back in 2018, I said, look, we're not about cryptocurrency. We're not about, any of these other things. It's just about doing good journalism and making our case to the people of Colorado that either we provide value to people or we don't. And I know that, many people, in fact, many friends and journalists were skeptical that, that we would even make it 1 year, much less 2 years, which is what we sort of announced out of the gate. And here we are, 5+ years into this. We started with 10 full-time people on staff. Today we have 28 full-time people on staff. And we're doing pretty good business. We've got 150,000 regular newsletter subscribers, close to 14,000 paying members. We see close to about 1 million unique visitors to our website every month. So, we're gratified that, and we have no paywall, meaning that, you can come and read our stories all day long if you want. If you can't afford to pay or you just don't want to pay, we feel strongly that, all Coloradans deserve access to quality news, whether they can afford to pay for it or not. And we've been just thrilled with the response from Coloradans who have stepped forward to help us and have joined this Colorado Sun community that we've created.
Yeah, and I think by those measures, and I think certainly most people looking from the outside would say this has been a great success. And Melissa Davis from the Colorado Media Project loves to brag on the Sun, particularly with that 14,000 paying members, and says it's more than the Texas Tribune. I don't know if I haven't seen their numbers lately, but
I think that's true. And I would say, in fairness to the Texas Tribune and other colleagues at nonprofit newsrooms around the country, they started off with a very different business model and different approach than we have. The Colorado Sun, from the very beginning, we've stood apart from others in that, we have focused on earned revenue, meaning, number one, subscriptions, memberships, people who choose to pay us to support our efforts. About 60% of our revenue comes from memberships. About 20% of our revenue comes from advertising, from sponsorships. And about 20% comes from grants. And as you and I both know, most nonprofit newsrooms would kill to have that kind of revenue stream. It's usually the other way around. The Texas Tribune and others, and I'm a great admirer of the Texas Tribune. Texas Tribune depends primarily on grants and donors for its revenue. They were a bit late to the game on the membership front. But, they do great work. They've got a newsroom of about 100 people, and it doesn't diminish the work that they do at all. We just have different business models. But we think that that's important because, as much as I admire and we admire the Texas Tribune, Colorado's not Texas. And there isn't a one-size-fits-all model for how news outlets should be funded or how they should be run. And we took some of the things that we liked from the Texas Tribune with their blessing and their help, their guidance. We have borrowed some of their approaches to this business. And in other respects, as I said, with the focus on membership and earned revenue, we've gone our own way. And I think it's served us well over the past 5 years.
So let's talk a little bit more about that business model and any evolutions that might have taken place. So you started digital only. You're still digital only. I think you've maybe entertained the idea of a print product. Why digital only? And do you think there could ever be a print product?
So I got asked a version of that question on the day that we announced the Colorado Sun back in 2018. And my answer then is the same as it is today, which is we will be whatever Colorado needs us to be. If Colorado needs the Colorado Sun to be in print, we'll do print. We know how to do print. I've been doing this for a very long time. We have a lot of experience. We understand how to put together a print newspaper and whatnot. But I do think that, the industry has changed. I mean, we've seen it all around. Frankly, sadly, we're seeing the death of the old business models around the country. Legacy newspapers are in decline. The LA Times, one of the great newspapers in the world, is experiencing big layoffs right now. And print is a challenge. I mean, I love print. I'm actually still a print subscriber to the Denver Post. I do like print, but I'm a runner. I go running most mornings. And when I go running in my neighborhood, there are very few driveways that have a Denver Post on them anymore. And that's changed. I mean, when I was a kid, I was a newspaper boy, and I delivered newspapers in my neighborhood on my bike, and most people got a newspaper. That's not the way it is today. People just don't consume their news the same way that maybe you and I did back in the day. And that's just the reality. I will say from a business perspective, it's been liberating to not have print. You and I, again, both know that print costs have been soaring over the past few years. When the Pueblo Chieftain closed its print operation a while back, that sent shockwaves across the newspaper landscape in Colorado, with publishers scrambling to find another option. We no longer have that problem at the Colorado Sun. We're digital. It's easy for us to get our product out. Snowstorms are not a problem. People have access to us, whenever they want it, however they want it. And I will say from the very beginning that we did a few things that if we're going to be digital, let's make this the best experience possible for people. We have a very fast website. It's very clean. It's not cluttered up with a lot of things that other, frankly, legacy newspapers are cluttered up with. As I said, not picking on the Denver Post. I'm cheering on the people who are doing good work there, but I'm still a subscriber to the Denver Post. And when I go to the website, I have to swat away takeovers and pop-ups and autoplay videos and all kinds of things that just get in the way. I just want to read the story. And the Denver Post is not alone. A lot of other legacy newspapers have similar issues on their websites, and we don't do that. You're not going to see autoplay videos and takeovers and pop-ups. The only pop-up you'll see at the Colorado Sun is a membership pop-up, saying, hey, look, you can read this story for free, but if you'd like to become a member, consider, for as low as $5 a month, you can become a member. And once you become a member, you'll never see another pop-up. So we wanted to create a website that was fast and clean, easy to access. Even if you're on a 10-year-old phone, you can still read stories on the Colorado Sun.
I think that user experience is often ignored, and it's not just the Denver Post. A lot of chain newspapers and large newspapers in general, their pages they look like crap. You get the pop-ups, you get the Taboola, spammy, clickbaity things at the bottom, and I don't understand what. I know it pays, but does it pay that well?
Well, and see, that's the thing. As we looked at that, it's like, well, yeah. And again, Denver Post is not alone. A lot of legacy newspapers do it, and yeah, it does pay. But how much does it pay? And is there a bigger cost to the newspapers and to their relationship with their readers? And that's where I was coming from, and that's where we came from, which is like, look, you and I, again, both know that ad revenue is in decline at legacy newspapers. It's a reality. And digital ads are not taking the place of the money that used to flow in from print ads. So from my perspective, why would I want to alienate the very people that I need to support us, meaning our readers? Why would I want to make this more complicated for them? To me, let's start from the very beginning and from a place of respect. I want to show our readers respect. And that means, Tim, if you come to the Colorado Sun, I'm not here to monetize you with every single click and every page view that you experience at the Colorado Sun. It's about providing you quality journalism, providing a quality reading experience, and for you to feel like, you know what, I learned something when I read that story, or I was entertained, or I gained a deeper understanding of something. They didn't scam me with a clickbait headline. They didn't, barrage me with pop-ups and takeovers and all of that sort of stuff. They gave me what I thought I was getting, which was access to a story, and we delivered on it. In fact, I was just talking to a colleague in Nebraska who's at a digital news outlet in Nebraska. We were chatting about things, and I said, and he asked me, well, how do you measure success? And I said, to me, it's about loyalty, right? So we're nearly not in the page view business anymore. I mean, I love page views. It's exciting when a story goes viral and you see 100,000 page views or 1 million page views we've seen. It's fun to see that. I'm a competitive guy, and it's nice to get the adrenaline going when you see something go viral. But we're really not in the page view business. Page views are about serving, again, just those quick, cheap clicks that you can generate through doing a story about the latest zoo baby or something like that. Oh, look at the picture, then you click on it, and then you click off and you go do something else. Those things generate a lot of page views, but they're sort of hollow page views. And at most legacy newspapers, you correct me if I'm wrong, but the average time that people spend on stories is maybe 45 seconds. And very consistently over the past 5 years, the average time that people spend on Colorado Sun stories has been close to 3 minutes. And to me, that means either we have really slow readers or we're producing content that is engaging for people. And I think that that's the case, that we are producing quality content. People stick with us. They read our stories and feel like, we delivered on the bargain. We told you this is going to be an important story. You stuck with us and you read it. And that's relationship building. We're treating you with respect. We're giving you quality content. We're not asking really for much in return. Like, again, you can read it for free if you want to, but if you find value in having access to quality journalism, not only for yourself, but for everybody across Colorado, a healthy democracy depends on an informed citizenry. And if you value those things, if you value democracy, then maybe you'd consider joining our Colorado Sun community. So that's what's happened over the past 5 years, and that's what we've tried to do, is build relationships, build trust, build loyalty, and deliver on our part of the promise. 5 years ago, we were just crazy kids who stepped out and decided to create this digital news outlet. And but 5 years later, we have a track record, and I'm proud of the work that we do.
Yeah, and that time on the articles, time on site metric is an indication of that value and the relationship, but certainly so is the 14,000 and the 60% of your revenue coming from memberships.
Yeah, and also, another measure is the open rate on our newsletters. It's much higher at the Colorado Sun than it is at most legacy newspapers. So again, we're producing content that people find engaging, and they feel like they know what they're getting when they come to the Colorado Sun.
Yeah. And I want to talk about the membership revenue piece of that, because the industry's increasingly looked to reader revenue, which I think has been a good move, but not necessarily in the way they've done it. I'm a little concerned. I just got off a call with John Garrett at Community Impact, which has been one of the big success stories in print. And, I think the Colorado Sun, Community Impact, and Alabama Media Group, who have an episode coming out, are all three of the organizations that come top of my mind when I think of success in the industry. And they've all really focused on, in very different ways, reaching the audiences and not putting barriers. So Community Impact is print, but they're distributing, they're doing the saturation model, where the whole community gets the newspaper for free, and they're doing good work, and all the surveys and their advertising is paying for it. Alabama Media Group completely got rid of print, but throughout their entire history on the web, they've not had the paywall, because they wanted They're an advertising driven model, and they wanted to maximize their reach. And so it's amazing that you're generating 60% of your revenue with membership without a paywall. And you and I had a conversation with CPA and Collab members to encourage them to think about that model and a membership model. The Guardian's done very well with that, which I know is a big influence on how you do yours. So you talk a little bit about reader revenue doesn't have to be paywall and subscriptions and denying people access.
Yeah, I mean, from the very beginning, that was one of the big questions that we asked ourselves. Who are we? Why are we doing this? Should we have a paywall? All the cool kids have paywalls. Legacy newspapers have paywalls for a reason. It's a pretty big stick. After you've read 3 stories or 5 stories or whatever it is, no more access for you. They do it for a reason. And I had smart people say to us, look, you're crazy if you don't have a paywall. You're sending a message that your stories have no value. That if you aren't charging for them via a paywall, you are sending a message that your stories do not have value. I disagree with that. I think that our quality speaks for itself, that people should feel like they're getting something different at the Colorado Sun when they come to us. That, to me, if you come to us and read a story and you're like, I read the same thing over at the other guys, then I think we've dropped the ball. I think we failed. My goal is not to dazzle people with quantity. We only produce somewhere between 4 and 6 stories a day. When I was at the Denver Post, some days we generated 100 URLs a day. I mean, a lot of that was sports and business and wire content, national, international news, etc. We don't do that at the Colorado Sun. We're just trying to focus on quality, not quantity. And to me, there was an equity piece as well, which is to say, not everybody can afford to pay for their news. And should news be only for those people who have just enough disposable income to be well informed, to be informed citizens, to be able to make smart choices, in their state, local, and national elections? Personally, and I'm not embarrassed to say I'm on team democracy. I believe that there is a reason that a free press was, protected in the very first amendment to the Constitution. It's not because the founding fathers were any big fans of newspapers. Newspapers beat up on those guys pretty big back in the day, and maybe should have beat up on them even more. But the founding fathers understood that a healthy democracy needs a watchdog. It needs a free press. And I don't think that watchdog should exist only for people who can afford to pay for it. So for us, even though there were people who said we should have a paywall, we decided to go this other way. It was a gamble, I will say. And, we wondered. But again, 5 years later, I think that we have demonstrated that people are willing to pay for quality. They're willing to pay for an entity that treats them with respect and delivers on its promises. And that's part of building relationships. And to me, that is what this is about, is building community, building relationships, treating each other with respect. We're nonpartisan. We don't tell people how to think, how to vote. We don't do endorsements. The only thing we advocate for is for democracy and for a better Colorado. We're not going to tell you what a better Colorado looks like. You can decide that yourself. But we want to give you the, facts and information that can help you make good decisions, whether you can afford to pay for it or not. And I think it's a compelling argument, frankly, for people who can afford to pay for it. Like, look, it's actually in your self-interest to ensure that your neighbors, your friends, your family also have access to quality information, whether they can afford to pay for it or not. So I think that argument has carried the day with a lot of people.
And, one of the things, I'm a daily podcast listener to the Daily Sun Up. And, on your website, on the podcast, one of the things, you and your team are not afraid to do is do that ask and point out the value you bring and the fact that this costs money. On the website, I think you've admitted to basically just taking the Guardian's approach, and you experimented. So you tried short ask and long ask, and the people who haven't been to the Guardian, U.S., scroll down and you will see this long pitch. It's free, but this takes work. And if you want to support us, donate. And you've found that works. And a lot of journalists and even publishers are afraid to do that ask. We don't like talking about ourselves, but you've got to put it in people's faces. And
yeah, it's been interesting. And, for me, just as an individual, right? As I said, I've been in this business for 40 plus years. Journalists are really bad about asking for help. We don't like to do it. Historically, we haven't done it. I mean, for me, I avoided being dragged into the business side of journalism for all of that time. I had multiple opportunities to go work on the business side of journalism, and I avoided it because I really am passionate about words and the journalism part and working with editors and working with reporters. But, when we created the Colorado Sun 5 years ago, somebody needed to run this crazy pirate ship. And, my colleagues decided that I was the best person to do that. So I've taken on that role. And honestly, it's been a lot more fun than I thought it would be 5 years ago. I've learned a lot. I've learned lessons the hard way. I've been very fortunate in that I've had mentors and people who have helped me and have helped me to learn about running a business, but also learning it's okay to ask for help when you need it. Whether that's to a foundation that might be interested in giving a grant, or whether it's just to individual readers saying, look, we want to do this work for you. That's why we do this. Nobody got into this business to get rich. Again, we're a nonprofit. We're doing this because we care about Colorado and we care about Coloradans, and we want to make sure that they have access to quality news that they can use to make decisions. But we will give you this for free, but it does cost a lot of money for us to do this kind of work. And won't you consider helping us? And again, seems like an obvious thing, but it's hard for journalists to get over that and ask for help, particularly when it comes to money. And I will say that Evan Smith, who is the former editor and a co-founder of the Texas Tribune, said something very smart to me probably 5 years ago, which was, look, it's easy to get money. It's really hard to get the right money. And, what he means by that is, there are people who might want to give you money, but, with strings attached. And here's some money, but, we want you to write about us or, write about this pet, project or whatever it is. And that's not for us. I've made it very clear to individuals, to foundations, others that look, we're grateful for your support. If you want what we want, which is a better Colorado and a more informed Colorado, we're talking the same language. But, if you do something that's newsworthy, you do something unethical, you've broken the law, we're going to write about you. And frankly, even if it doesn't come to that point, if you've done nothing illegal or unethical, but we might write stories that you don't like, that you disagree with, and you need to be okay with that. There are going to be stories you like, stories you don't like. That's just the way it is. We don't have any ideology other than trying to fairly and accurately report on the news of the day. And nobody agrees with everything that not even I that we publish. But we're fair, we're accurate, we stand behind our work, and we're human beings. When we make mistakes, we'll correct them. I mean, to me, that is a very basic test for a legitimate news organization. Do you acknowledge errors? Do you correct them? Are you transparent about it? And we do those things. We're proud, actually, that we've been we're part of the Truth Project, and that we are very transparent about the efforts that we take to demonstrate, to show our work, to demonstrate that we were there and we witnessed this event. Here are the source documents. Here is why we know what we know and how we know it. So again, that's all part of earning trust, treating people with respect, building community. Those are just fundamental things for us in this business.
I want to talk a little bit about that journey to the business side. I know lots of journalists who've done similar, not just the business side, but you're a startup entrepreneur, and that's a big leap to take, especially when you've worked at some of the biggest organization, AP. And so to step out and be an entrepreneur, it's not only risky, there's a lot you don't know. So what is that learning journey? What has been surprising or most difficult for you?
I mean, frankly, it was scary, right? I mean, for my whole career, I had worked for fairly large organizations that, had their own HR departments, their own payroll departments, their own legal departments. And when I was with AP, once upon a time, this was back when I was working in the Reno, Nevada bureau, and there was some local official who complained about a story and threatened to sue us. And I said, okay, well, fine. I'll put our lawyers in touch with you. And a former U.S. Attorney General called this guy, and he called me back and he said, call off the dogs. And that's the kind of, backstop I grew up with in this business was having all of that support, flying with a net. Being an entrepreneur and starting our own business means very much flying without a net. And we had a lot of things to figure out. I mean, early on, I thought, well, I could do payroll with QuickBooks, and quickly realized that's a very bad idea. I mean, could I do it? Sure. Yeah. Okay. But not a great use of my time and wasn't a very efficient thing to do. So we outsourced that to a company that is called a PEO. They handle payroll and make sure we're in compliance with federal and state and local laws and all that sort of stuff. Again, just there was a lot I didn't know. There's more that I didn't know than I did know about running a business. Again, was very fortunate. I had people like J.B. Holston at the University of Denver who stepped forward and was a founder of the Colorado Media Project, who has been a great friend and mentor to me and to the Colorado Sun since our founding. We've had other colleagues and others from around the country who have stepped up, and at the end of the day, the decisions were ours. But we've made some good decisions, maybe some less good decisions, but that's true of any small business. Whether you start up a restaurant or a news outlet, there's a lot to learn. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to learn from them, hopefully, and do better tomorrow. And I think one of our strengths, frankly, has been that we are small and entrepreneurial and very nimble. You referenced the podcast. I mean, that was when we launched 5 years ago. We didn't have a podcast. And I think I was up at the University of Colorado speaking to a group of students. And I said, talking to a whole class of students, and like, who here subscribes to a newspaper? Nobody raised their hands. How about a magazine? Maybe one person raised their hands. Where do you guys get your news? They all sort of shrugged their shoulders and said, oh, my from a news feed, but podcasts. Oh yeah, we all like podcasts. I'm like, you know what? If these guys want to get their news via podcast, they're tomorrow's members and subscribers, and we need to get in front of them. And to me, as much as I love print, I'm platform agnostic. Working for AP for 20 plus years, AP doesn't publish a newspaper. AP is in the business of doing good journalism and delivering it to its members and subscribers around the world, whether that's broadcast, radio, print, internet, etc. And that's kind of the model that I embrace, which is like, look, I love print, but this isn't about a platform. This is just about serving the role that we have to play in this democracy of being a watchdog on government and telling these important stories in whatever form people want it. And there were a lot of people who just were not going to read our content on our website because that's just not the way they wanted to consume news. So we were able to quickly pivot and say, okay, let's do a podcast. So we stood one up fairly quickly. And, if I worked at a large bureaucratic organization, that could have been workshopped and meetings and subcommittees and, to death for years before we launched something. We stood something up pretty quickly. So we've had to learn on the fly. I've had to learn on the fly. And I think, overall, I'm proud of the work that we've done. We've grown the business through some tough times. I mean, look, and I know 2023 was a really difficult year across the industry. We saw waves of layoffs and reductions. Newspapers continuing to close. Sadly, we just wrote about another newspaper in Colorado that closed its doors. It's a tough time in our business. I mean, it's always been a tough business. Let's face it. But 2023 was a particularly difficult year. I mean, good friends of mine tell me that they're just burned out of the news, whether it's COVID or politics or wars. All of the things that a lot of people are just exhausted, and they tell me that have had to turn away from the news or turn off the news, and that's hard to hear, particularly for somebody who is in the business. From a selfish perspective, it's hard to hear, but also for somebody who cares about democracy. Like, we need people to be informed, and that's on me. That's on everybody in this business to find ways to re-engage with people who are maybe just exhausted from the news. So anyway, we've had to learn a lot, and I continue to learn. Frankly, as you mentioned, we became a nonprofit here just a couple of months ago, and I've never run a nonprofit before. I've served on nonprofit boards before, so it's not completely new to me. But there's a lot to learn, and it's a different animal than the public benefit corporation that we've been over the past 5 years. So I'm learning a lot in that world too.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that conversion. So why did you start off as a B Corp? Because I think you probably understand you talked about being a nonprofit at the beginning, and why the conversion?
Yeah, so from the very beginning, look, from my perspective and our perspective, the sky was falling down around our heads, and we felt like we needed to get something started up quickly. And the fastest way to stand up a company is to create an LLC. So that's what we did on day one. But then we quickly realized that didn't really reflect who we are and our values. And I love nonprofits. I mean, there's a lot to like about nonprofits. But we also, again, thanks to friends who said, at universities, at the University of Colorado, University of Denver, and elsewhere, they're like, there's this other thing that you guys might want to be, you might want to consider, which is to become a public benefit corporation. Now, public benefit corporation is a for-profit entity that has a public service mission woven into the very DNA of the company. So there were a few reasons to do that. Number one, it allowed us to still remain very small and very nimble, to not have to turn over the governance of the company to an outside board, as most nonprofits do. So we, again, one of our main concerns about when we were at the Denver Post was that Alden Global Capital could not have cared less what I thought. They could not have cared less what any of my colleagues there thought. They were going to do what they were going to do. So you had journalists and others who had no voice and certainly no vote. And so that was important for us to at least be masters of our own destiny when it came to right or wrong. We're going to make decisions and live or die by them. So we felt like this public benefit corporation model was a good one for us. And I think it has been a good one for us. I think we've demonstrated over the past 5 years that we could grow. We went from 10 to, as I said, 28. And that's fine. But I will say that it took a lot of explaining for people to, like, public benefit corporation, what is that again? Is that nonprofit? Is it like, no, we're for profit, but we operate with the heart and the values of a nonprofit. And, as again, friends, smarter friends than me would say, look, if you have to explain yourself and it takes you that long, you've already lost a certain number of people. And frankly, for a news outlet, from my perspective, there are two reasons to be a for-profit entity. One is profit. So let's be real. It's the news business. We did not start the Colorado Sun to become millionaires or something like that, to earn profits. I mean, you've got to make money whether you're a nonprofit or a for-profit, but this was not about lining my pockets or anybody else's pockets. Again, as we've demonstrated, as we've grown our revenues and added more members, that didn't mean a bigger paycheck for me. It meant we were able to do more journalism and hire more journalists and we went from 10 to 28, et cetera. The other reason to be a for-profit, from my perspective as a news outlet, is to do endorsements. You can have a voice of God, and we endorse Senator so-and-so, or we think you should vote this way on this measure. We decided from the very beginning that we would be nonpartisan and that we weren't going to do endorsements. So from my perspective, we had the downside of being for-profit, which is to say there were foundations and individuals that just would not support us because we were a for-profit entity. They had decided they would only support nonprofit entities, and I understand that. So we had that downside without the upside, the two upside reasons for being a for-profit. And I thought, you know what? It represents who we are. It represents our values, and I think that it's an exciting new chapter for the Colorado Sun to be nonprofit. It's easy for people to understand who we are and what we're all about. It doesn't take a lot of explanation. We are a nonprofit. And frankly, since we announced that we became a nonprofit a couple of months ago, it has opened up this new revenue stream for us that just was not available to us. People who were like, look, I just want to give you money. Can I just give you $50? Can I give you $5,000, et cetera? And the answer is today, yes. And by the way, you'll get a tax deduction for your contribution. So thank you. So we've had hundreds of Coloradans just in the past couple of months who have stepped up and decided that they wanted to help us through donations to our nonprofit.
And so fresh off that process, do you have any tips or warnings for newsrooms considering doing the conversion?
Well, I will say this, that, we were warned from the very beginning, like, oh, it's complicated. It could take, up to 12 months. The IRS approved our application within 3 weeks. It made my head spin. I mean, it was wonderful that they approved it so quickly, and a testament, again, to some of the fine legal help that I had, some of the guidance that we had from others. But we frankly weren't fully prepared for the IRS to give us that approval so quickly. I will say that, look, nonprofit doesn't mean you don't make a profit. It doesn't mean that you don't go make money. I would say that it's still important to focus on the fundamentals. Again, just from our perspective, treat people with respect, do quality work. To me, these are things that serve us. They served us well as a for-profit public benefit corporation. They're serving us well as a nonprofit. Understand who you are and who you aren't. Again, in talking to colleagues around the country, a lot of people have reached out to me over the past 5 years about, well, how did you do it? And what, can you help us, here, whatever it is. And it's like, look, you need to know who you are and who you aren't. We've never pretended to be a mini Denver Post, for instance. We do not try to be all things to all people. We don't cover the Denver Broncos. We don't cover the Nuggets, as much as I enjoy watching them from time to time. You have choices as a reader, as a listener, as a viewer, to get that content from some other place. We try to give you stories that you're not going to find someplace else. We want to help you understand what's happening at the State House. We want to, we did a story, Jennifer Brown on my staff did a story about Colorado's kind of quirky when it comes to raw milk, raw unpasteurized milk. Like it's really hard to get your hands on raw milk. And there are people who would say, well, what are you, crazy? Don't do that. It's unhealthy. There are other people who are like, no, it's great for your health. And anyway, we did this story about how Colorado is a bit of an outlier when it comes to allowing access to raw milk. You can buy a share in a cow or a herd of cows, of dairy cows, and get access to raw milk that way. But anyway, we did this story. There's been legislation now being introduced at the State House directly in response to our story. I don't think anybody else was writing about that. So we try to just know who we are, stay in our lane, do good work. Don't try to do too much. Just bring quality to everything that we do. So with a sense of humor from the very beginning, you have to have swag, right? You have to have T-shirts and tote bags and things like that. And it turns out there are a lot of decisions to be made around things like that. One of the many hats that I was wearing, early on, in addition to, being the head of the business and the editor and all of that was, I went and looked at different T-shirt manufacturers, and we found a local T-shirt manufacturer who provided a lot of options. You could get this cheap T-shirt here that begins to fade and fray after you wash it 2 times, or you could pay more money and get this quality shirt that's going to feel good forever and be a great shirt. And I said, you know what? We're all about doing quality journalism, quality work, and treating our people with respect. If we're going to put our name on it, it better be a quality piece of merchandise. So our tote bags are really good tote bags. Our T-shirts, I still have my T-shirt I proudly wear that I've had for the past 5 years. My Colorado Sun hat is quality. In fact, Evan Smith at the Texas Tribune wears a Colorado Sun hat every day when he plays tennis. So we do quality work, whether it's in the T-shirt and hat business or journalism.
So now I want to end with a series of rapid-fire questions, and the questions are quick, but your answers don't have to be. So the first one, compared to a year ago, are you more or less optimistic about not just the Sun, but local news?
I am optimistic about the Colorado Sun. In fact, I'm more optimistic than ever about the Sun. I think that our conversion to nonprofit has opened up some new, exciting possibilities for us. I think that it's a very clear message to readers about who we are and what our values are. I'm very optimistic about that. I'm less optimistic about news in general. I mean, I'm not such a Pollyanna that I fail to see what's happening around the country. Alden is going to continue what it does. Just in Baltimore this last week, they spun off the Baltimore Sun and related newspapers to an owner that might actually end up being worse than Alden Global Capital. Time will tell, but hedge funds that control most of the newspapers in the United States are going to continue doing bad things. And I will say there's a glimmer of hope in there, in that I am hearing from and seeing small digital startups pop up to help fill the void and help carry the banner forward. So long term, I'm optimistic. Short term, I'm very optimistic about the Sun. Short term, I think we're still in for some pain and some heartache in the news business in the coming 5 years.
Does AI fill you with more hope or dread when it comes to journalism?
Boy, a little bit of both. We, as an industry, are going to have to struggle with it. This is just my personal 2 cents worth here. AI is not going to go away, that we can't just turn our backs on it. It might very well be a powerful tool for us to use, but just a tool. I think that it's important for us. I mean, for instance, we're never going to allow at the Colorado Sun AI to write stories, for instance. That's not going to happen. We're all about providing quality writing, quality journalism. I don't think AI takes the place of human reporters. Could AI be used as a tool to help inform some of our reporting? Could be. There are a lot of concerns that we all have about AI, about the hallucinations that we've seen from AI. It needs to be fact-checked. But I will say, I asked ChatGPT to write a profile of the Colorado Sun and to write a profile of me. It did a pretty reasonable job in less than 10 seconds, but it inserted some very significant errors. And I said, no, that's wrong. I didn't win that award, or the Colorado Sun didn't do that, and do it again, correct it again. And frankly, at the very end of this process, AI did, and this never was published, this was just for my own amusement and information, AI produced reasonable brief stories about both myself and the Colorado Sun that had to be fact-checked, that had to be corrected, but it's kind of the process that I've experienced over the past 40 years with editors and, say, interns have always experienced. And there needs to be that accountability, that fact-checking, that skepticism. I think that there probably is a place for AI and will be a place for AI in journalism in years ahead, but we better be very careful that we don't sacrifice our values and our integrity.
I could run down the hall and fact check this, but messy desk or clean desk?
Messy desk.
You talked a little bit about some of the advice you got from Evan Smith. Do you have some favorite advice that you've been given, whether it's related to the Sun or just personal life advice?
Well, again, I go back to Evan's advice, again, as the guy who, oversees the business. And obviously, I've got a lot of help from a great team here at the Colorado Sun. But at the end of the day, our integrity, our name, our values, those things are not for sale. No matter, what billionaire, knocks on the door or whatever it is, those are things that we can never get back if we lose them. And I've been doing this too long to, sacrifice those things to any person or any entity. So I think Evan's shorthand advice was money's easy to find. The right money is very hard to find. And I think that's great advice for anybody trying to set out to do this work.
Is there a piece of advice that is, or conventional wisdom that you hear that drives you crazy in its wrongness or oversimplification? Well,
I mean, in general, the doom saying, even though I said, I think we're in for some heartache ahead, we have always been a gloomy bunch, in this business. I remember when I was a journalism student 40 plus years ago, a journalist came to one of my classes and looked out at all of the fresh-faced college students who wanted to become journalists and follow in the footsteps of Woodward and Bernstein and said, don't do it. Newspapers are dying. You'll never make a living in this business. And he wasn't entirely wrong. 40 plus years ago, the newspaper that he represented is a shadow of its former self. It's owned by Gannett, and once upon a time, it occupied a giant newsroom. Today, they would fit around this small table that I'm sitting at right now. And yet, we're still able to do important work to serve the role that the Founding Fathers envisioned for us in the First Amendment, the watchdog role. Our democracy needs a strong free press, a strong, vibrant free press. And look, people will always need it. As tough as this business is, there's always going to be room for people who are passionate about the business, who want to right wrongs, who want to learn about things, who bring curiosity. And, I would never discourage somebody from going into journalism if they're passionate about it, if they're going into it for the right reasons. If you're looking to make $1 billion or something, go do something, go learn coding. Go. Although that's probably bad too, because AI is going to take that over. It's already taken that over. But yeah, I mean, the conventional wisdom is, newspapers are dying and the news industry is dying. I don't buy that. What is happening is the old business models in journalism are dying. We're watching that in front of our eyes, and it is sad to see papers like the Baltimore Sun, in decline. But I think we have smart people. We have people who are passionate, people who are smart, who care about democracy, who care about their communities, and want to tell important stories. As long as we have people who are willing to step up and try new things and to search for new business models. Again, there's not a one-size-fits-all model. Let's explore. Let's find some new things, and we can make this work. And I'm very much an optimist long-term about this business. It's always going to be a tough business, always has been a tough business, but it's going to be around. Journalism will survive, and democracy will survive. We'll survive together.
Good to hear in 2024 that democracy will survive. Sometimes I wonder.
Here's hoping. I mean, I'm not, like the old Ben Franklin, warning was, you got a republic if you can keep it. So we've got a democracy that faces constant challenges, and seriously, more challenges today than ever. But I do have faith that we will all collectively work hard to keep it. And that's part of our role as journalists, is to keep people informed about the good things and the bad things alike. And you won't like what you see every day, but, on balance, I hope readers of the Colorado Sun will feel like we work hard to keep them informed.
The next question I usually ask about people's favorite failures. Just, we don't talk about failures enough and how it puts us on a different path. But given that you're at your 5-year mark, Looking back at the Sun, are there favorite mistakes or failures or really big lessons that you learned from things that happened, that went south maybe?
Yeah. So, I mean, well, frankly, I mentioned one already. The first one was thinking that I could just do payroll myself. I mean, no, really, that's a bad idea. It took me 2 months of doing that before I realized, no, yeah, I need to turn this over to the professionals and do that. I mean, it is. I have had to learn that, yeah, there are certain things that I can do. I can learn how to do that. But, is it the best use of my time? Because time is a limited resource. And just because I can do something doesn't necessarily mean that I should. So sometimes letting things go, delegating is a challenge for everyone. Understanding when it's important for me to be involved in something and when it's not important for me, that there's a better use of my time doing something else. That has been important for me. Again, learning how to ask for help. I mean, it seems like a simple thing, but it really has been a process. Learning, how the world of philanthropy works. That's an ongoing process. I'm taking the first steps into that world. So I would say, there's a fundamental thing is being open to learning and being open about making mistakes. Again, sometimes we make mistakes in our journalism. You be transparent about it, own it, hopefully learn from it, do better the next time. And I feel the same way about business as well. We're all human, other than the AI, and we will make mistakes from time to time, and let's just learn from them and move forward. But yeah, I try to be. I've learned to be a better guardian of my own time.
So 2 more questions. I'm very worried, particularly in this year, about mental health for our field. And I was actually just talking with John Garrett. He had just posted on LinkedIn a survey that showed more CEOs have thought about leaving than employees. And we don't often talk about sort of the challenges when you're leading an organization. So how do you think about mental health for your team and yourself? And what do you do to restore yourself and maintain some sort of equilibrium?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I will say, again, when I was a foreign correspondent for AP in Moscow, I helped cover the fall of the Soviet Union. I covered the war in Chechnya. And I got thrown into that kind of work with, in retrospect, shockingly little training. There was nobody afterwards saying, do you want to talk about your feelings after you've, experienced having a gun pointed at your head and seeing dead bodies and explosions and having the Russians shooting at you? And no, I mean, I'm sure that I did have PTSD after all of that. I mean, there were times when 2 years later, when I would just wake up in night sweats, dreaming that I was walking the streets of Grozny during the, covering the Chechen war. So historically, we paid very little attention to mental health of our employees. After the King's Supers shooting, the Colorado Sun flooded the zone, and we worked hard and produced excellent coverage of that event. We paused pretty quickly thereafter, and we brought in a mental health expert to just for anybody who wanted to come in and talk about what they saw, what they experienced, what they're feeling, how they're processing it. That was the first time in my career. And again, I oversaw AP's coverage of Columbine back in the day. I've covered and overseen coverage of more school shootings and wildfires and hurricanes and floods and wars than I can even remember. That was the first time that I had ever participated in such a thing. So that's a good thing that we're taking time to take care of each other more today than when I was growing up in this business. For me personally, yes, it's been stressful. As I said, I've had to step out of my comfort zone. My comfort zone was running a newsroom. I've had to learn how to balance the books and read spreadsheets and deal with accountants and lawyers and all of the rest of that stuff. That can be uncomfortable and can be stressful. I will say there again, I've been fortunate in my friends. I'm part of a small cohort of other digital news organizations. some as small as Lookout Santa Cruz, the Block Club Chicago, the Baltimore Banner is part of this group. And we sort of jokingly call it the 3 a.m. club, which is when you wake up at 3 a.m. as the CEO, what are the things you're worried about? And let's talk about it together. And, oh, you're dealing with that problem? I dealt with that problem 6 months ago. Here's how I thought about it. And so we've provided some mentorship to each other and just a friendly ear sometimes. And that's been really helpful for me. But yeah, I mean, look, anytime you step out of your comfort zone in life, or in business or in life, it can be uncomfortable. And I will say there have been a number of uncomfortable moments, more good moments than bad, but, it was scary to venture out and do our own thing.
Last question. So 5 years out, what would wild success for the Sun look like?
Well, wild success, wild success would have us probably doubling the size of our newsroom. Really, at the end of the day, though, it's not about, of course, I'm on team democracy. I'm on team journalism. I think more journalism is a good thing for the public, for Colorado. I'm very much in favor of that. At the end of the day, what I really want is a sustainable Colorado Sun, where we're able to do important work, we're able to do good work, where we're able to treat each other, and I mean fellow journalists and whatnot, and our readers with respect. I believe that that's important. When we created the Colorado Sun, nobody took a pay cut when they left the Denver Post. We provide health insurance to any of our employees who want it or need it. We have a 401k that we make available to employees. We're trying to operate in a way that we're taking care of each other. And to me, I just hope that in another 5 years or 10 years or 50 years that the Colorado Sun continues to be a place that it's a force for good. We're doing this important work, and we're taking care of each other, and hopefully have continued to earn the respect of Coloradans and their support. And we're a sustainable news organization. Again, the journalist from 40 years ago was not wrong. It's a tough business. It's always been a tough business. It probably always will be a tough business. But I'm an optimist. I think that we're going to figure this out, and we've got a lot of smart people out there who are pioneering new business models, and we're proud to be part of that effort.
Hey, well, thank you so much for your time, Larry, and I hope the next 5 years do see wild success.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Tim.
Thank you for listening to the Local News Matters podcast. Never miss an episode by subscribing in your favorite podcast player and sign up for our newsletter at lnmpod.com. And thanks to our production partners at Pirate Audio. Pirate Audio believes every community deserves great things to listen to, and they're on a mission to help local newsrooms reach their communities via audio. If you're interested in starting a podcast or need production support for an existing one, let me know and I'll be happy to connect you. If you have guest recommendations, others doing interesting and innovative work in local news, let me know through the contact form at the website lnmpod.com.